All right, Brian McDonald. This week we are going to continue with the Masters of the Craft series, and we have another one of your friends, Ronnie del Carmen. Can you talk about why you wanted Ronnie on this show, and maybe some of the things to be watching for with Ronnie?
Ronnie, I'm a huge fan of Ronnie. He's so good with the emotional stuff. Even if you look at his boards, like if you look, he did a lot of boards for Wall-E and with Eve. And when I look at those boards, I can tell it's him because you are moved just by the storyboards. I wanted to know how he thought. I wanted to know what went into his work. And there were some surprising things in the interview, which was like a guy like me, I grew up, this is all I ever wanted to do. And he started off kind of as a fan, sort of obsessed with movies and stuff, and liked to draw, but he wasn't doing what I was doing, which is I knew when I went to the movies, I was going to school. I think he got the stuff through osmosis. He just got it through consuming it. But the work, anyway, his work is unbelievable. I could not be a bigger fan of Ronnie's work. It's amazing. He can draw, he can think. It's all about how you think, I think, for me. And I like the way he thinks.
Hello, and welcome to You Are a Storyteller, Masters of the Craft, a conversational series with author and filmmaker Brian McDonald. In this episode, Brian is joined by Pixar director and writer Ronnie del Carmen, who received an Oscar nomination for Pixar's animated smash hit, Inside Out. Ronnie shares his journey as an artist, along with the mystical and often painful processes creatives face in producing empathetic work that resonates across audiences.
The first time I was aware of you was it was a Dark Horse comic. It was an alien comic that you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the first time I saw your work. And I'm like, this guy's amazing. And I remember everybody was passing that comic around saying, this guy is amazing. And then I didn't know what you were doing or who you were. I knew your name. And then you were working on the animated Batman. Is that what
I
you
was
doing?
Batman, the animated series.
Yeah.
I started working on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I gave a lecture at Pixar, and you happened to be in the audience, and you introduced yourself after the lecture. And when you told me your name, I'm like, I know who that guy is. So I have been a fan of your work for a long time. And one of the things that you and your brother both have this, which is this, there's a delicacy to your work that is amazing. I can't quite explain it, but it's just it's very sensitive work.
Oh,
and I see it in your boards too. Like your boards blow my mind because there's a lot of emotion in there. And so I guess I want to know first of all, if you tell people what you do, like you're at a party or something, and you tell people what you do, what is their biggest misconception about what you do?
Yeah, that's a big moment that always keeps happening when I introduce my in a mixed group.
Yeah.
I tend to tell them that I work at Pixar, and then the next question is, "Oh, are you an animator?"
Oh, okay.
That's usually it. And I was like, "No, and then I'm faltering the same way I'm faltering here because I should have actually had this rehearsed over years,
right?
But because I'm conflicted by my answer and how always I get this response is always kind of mixed. I've never quite settled on the one actual kind of, this is the memorized spiel. So I tell them, it's like, I do storyboards, I write, I direct, I design.
Okay. Do most people understand what storyboards are now?
No, they don't, because at least I pared it down to that, because before I would say, I'm a story artist.
Oh, well, yeah.
Now, that actually confuses people even more.
I'm sure it does.
And then they feel like, so are you a writer or you are an artist? Which actually is a fair question because at the end summation, you're both, and you're neither.
Right.
You're not either one of those things. You're an amalgam of both. you do your best to actually always stay being both, such that if you were just primarily drawing something, then you're kind of doing a disservice to your writer's side.
Right.
You're just writing. You're not really completing the experience, because a movie is experience.
Right.
As an event, as a moment. That is neither just written or neither just, imagery.
Right.
So that is why I always tell them, and by then I'm losing people already, which is that the way that we as story people make movies is how you experience it. As both kind of like something to experience with your senses of visuals as well as your senses of hearing. And hopefully both actually results in emotion. So, but by then I'm thinking it's like, okay, let's talk about the weather. Maybe we talk about The Simpsons. I like this subject too much. And I do it. And I love doing this job, and it comes out, but nah, I don't know.
Yeah, I get that. It's interesting because there are often, especially this stuff is hidden. It's public facing in a lot of ways. And one of the reasons that I actually wanted to have a show like this is because I was working with Glenn Keane on something. I was helping him with a project, and we're in this room. It was just me and Glenn, and we were in this room, and before I was working with Glenn, I mean, he's a friend now, but before I was working with him, I was just this huge geeky fan of Glenn.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And, like, who's not? Right. And so he read my books, and he asked me to help him on something. And so I went to help him, and I was sitting in that room, and I thought, now, if I wasn't lucky enough to be in this room helping out on this project, I would want to be a fly on the wall. I almost felt like I'm having an experience that a lot of people would like to have, to see how something they love gets made, right? Yeah. Because that's a big mystery, right? Yeah. When it's done, it's just done, and nobody knows all of the work and all of the decisions and all the ways it could have gone and all the things that got thrown out and the things that were cool but had to go, and none of that stuff is there. And so that's, I'm really interested in that part of it, because so when you're thinking about a project, what do you think, what is your job? What do you feel like your job is? And here's what I mean by that. And it's just weird. I feel like I'm name dropping all the time, but so I was talking to Frank Oz about that, who says he might do the show. Do you know Frank?
Yes.
Well, you call him, because he says he wants to do the show, so he'll do it eventually.
He'll do it.
He'll do it. I love talking to him. We have great conversations.
Yeah, he's great,
isn't he?
Yeah.
So okay. So, but one of the things he said to me once was that he feels like his job is to bring things to life. He goes, "That's what I do." Wow, so that isn't it? Yeah. So that encapsulates the puppeteering that he has done, the directing, the acting. Right? I bring things to life. And I thought that was a great way to talk about what he did.
Yes.
So if you had to define what you do or how you think of the job, what do you think it is?
I've always felt that I felt like I was approaching it when I was doing it and did not observe it. And then the question happens where, and how do you do your job, or what exactly is your job? I started to kind of try and understand it myself, because it's hard to actually kind of tease it apart, because in the one sense what I do is obvious because there are drawings that show up,
right.
And then at the other part of it is that the question is like, so why did you decide to do that,
right
and then the other part of it is kind of like the result of it when I actually do my work, and my immediate audience is usually either the directors, or if I'm directing, is my directing partner, which would be Pete Doctor, or other people. So these are the first people to see what I've done.
Right.
In the studio, it'll be kind of the decision makers will see it, and their reactions are what I will aim for, which usually is because of their experience of making movies. They kind of know this is a good moment. This is worth experiencing, but they're also human beings. So they have to respond to it as that. So when I tackle any moment, I almost try and find first how I relate to the moment. Where is me in it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been given I've been given feedback that says like, man, your drawings are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you did that drawing so well.
Right.
Oh, you can draw anything and everything, which at some point was great, but then at a later point, it actually is, it minimizes what I actually had put into
Sure.
making the drawing work, because I believe that a drawing not only communicates kind of how facile you can do it or how well you can do it, but it actually has to communicate something beyond just the drawing. It has to communicate what the character is going through, what the story is about, what the underlying issues and emotions are. So as much as I believe that they are being affected in that way, but the comment is like, your drawing is so good.
Right. Right.
That at some point I started to actually feel that I wonder if what they're responding to is just the drawings, or am I always going to be the drawing guy? Not that I wanted to be anything else.
Right.
But my immediate public, which are my producers, directors, and colleagues, stopped giving me scripts. They actually let me kind of handle the material as raw as it is,
Mm-hmm.
or as early as possible. So I actually create the moments.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because of all the training we've gotten from acting to improv, you feel that you can make this moment come alive based on the feelings that you are feeling,
Mm-hmm.
that you're going through as the character. And that generates the imagery. That generates the moment.
Right.
Because the job before, if you were just storyboarding for TV back in the day, you get a script, and there are the lines, here's the description, you delineate those.
Right.
And if you vary from that, you kind of like, you may have not followed it to the letter, even though you followed your muse, your feeling about it.
Right.
Not quite what we were looking for. And you will get you get that kind of feedback. And what I do these days in features, it's the other way around. So kind of, I get to become the source of what happens to the character in the movie, which is the preferred way for myself. So what I do is that I find how close I am to this moment, so that I can kind of extract the truth out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So example is like in a moment like Coco, wherein I am not part of the crew. I am not part of the major push and versions of the movie. And at one point, Lee approaches me and says, Ronnie, we have a moment that is kind of a moment that you do.
Uh-huh.
Oh, and I say, okay, I get it. And then I'm thinking, it's like, because we know each other, I'm known at Pixar as kind of like, there's that guy who does these things. Mm-hmm. And they're usually these parts of movies. It's usually somewhere towards the end of the second act, probably somewhere close to the lowest point, or maybe, and then also kind of like there's also somewhere close to the second act, past the midpoint, where there are major epiphanies of the characters that actually have started to point them away from their core principles to the first act. That's where I come in.
Okay.
And they already have the setting. They build the roadmaps going there, and they already have the moment. But they still ask me, can you do this moment for us? This was like, yeah, sure. This is the moment wherein Chicharron, who owns a guitar, is the target of our two protagonists, so that they can borrow a guitar from him, which is kind of like your surface goal. Go and borrow a guitar.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure if I'm going to be welcome in there, but I'm going to go, I'm going to go work my magic on him. And then he does. When he goes inside, they have a little tiff with Chicharron, but in the rules of this world, he's going to disappear for the final time because nobody remembers him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so the way I tackle that moment is like, well, it seems like everything's there already.
Mm-hmm.
Even the lines of dialogue that needs to be said. But I wanted to mine for it is like, where would I put this setting for the maximum impact of things? And how would I position him? What kind of old man is he? And then usually I like to deal with body poses and then pauses and who says what and what are we looking at. And then primarily, whose experience is this really?
Right.
And in that, because it's delineated kind of like wholesale, I wanted to focus on like, this is the boy's experience because this is the boy's movie.
Right.
So everything is kind of having to kind of happen around him, and it's his observation of the dynamics of the two characters. But who am I in this moment? Me.
Right.
And so in this moment, I am Chicharron.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to him. I even draw him to look like me when I was drawing it. And I set the lighting, I set the mood, because I'm thinking it's like I'm going to be the actor in this moment, and I can dig not too deep and understand, nobody thinks about you.
Right.
And at some point, really, even if you went, nobody would even know.
Mm-hmm.
So the kind of feelings that you're going through kind of delineate, for me anyway, it has to start like this. I have a center part that I want to get to. There are some moments of levity. There's a song that's going to be played. What are we looking at when that's happening? All of those things, just based on how I feel about this character, Chicharron. But I also want to be able to show it through the eyes of the young boy who's watching. And then because of those kinds of feelings and choices that I'm imagining is happening, I draw the set.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of make the lighting happen. And I feel like, oh yeah, because I love doing these things, because I'm a cinematographer and a production designer. But
Right.
I want to put it over here, put it over there. So by the time I present it, I present a movie part that, if you haven't thought about it, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to put this over here.
Right.
And then I pitch it. And then they will buy it. They will say, like, I love it. We will change this line here, a little high over there, low over there, and then run with it. I pitch it one time.
Huh.
And then I go away.
So let me see if I can boil this down to one of the Frank Oz-like sort of statement. So your job, it seems to me, is to create empathy for the characters.
Yes.
Right? And the way you do that is through empathizing with the characters.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. So, and I can feel that in your drawings. When I look at your drawings, I can feel that. There are a lot of story artists where everything is technically fine, but I don't feel things. But if I look at your work, I'll feel what I'm supposed to feel. So, are there any influences that you had early on? Let's go back a little bit and talk about your early influences, and then move up through till now. Yeah. So you started off wanting to draw for movies, or how did that?
No, when I started, I just wanted to be able to draw well. I wanted to be an illustrator. When we could finally afford to send me to school in Manila, I studied a fine arts course, but it majored in advertising. That means that you're grooming to be an art director, or at least a member of the art department in an advertising agency, because they actually pay a wage.
Right.
Then you work in the ritzy financial district in Manila. So it feels like, but they actually don't pay you anything.
Okay.
And you get to draw, and you get to spec type. You understand advertising production, because I love graphics and all of that. And then when I migrated to the United States, it was the animation was dying out. Mm-hmm. And
when was this?
This is 1989. 1989.
Okay.
I think, if I remember correctly, it's like The Great Mouse Detective is done, but then there's this little movie out there, kind of like whispered around. It's like, there's a movie, this Little Mermaid is being made somewhere, and at Disney, and nobody with a title like Little Mermaid, it's like, this is going to be more of the same.
Right. Yeah.
And
they were in a very slow. They were in a slump. I remember this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to interrupt you quick to tell you something that somebody told me. So I moved to Los Angeles in 1986.
Okay.
And I had worked in animation, doing animation camera work and motion graphics and stuff. And so anyway, I had this job, my first job down there. I was working on a music video. And the guy I worked for had worked at Disney. And I was just like, I would love to work there. Oh my God, I could, it was like a dream, to work.
Oh, yeah.
And he said to me, oh, well, if you ever go to Disney, you'll notice that everybody's really good at hacky sack. And I said, really? He says, yeah. He goes, because the way that they were running the animation department was an animator would do a scene and turn it in. And then they would always hand it back to the animator and say, this isn't good enough, without really looking at it. However it was being run. So what they would do is they said, that didn't take long enough. You did that too quickly. You work on it some more. And it was just a procedure. So what they would do is they would do their scene and then put it away for a week and go play hacky sack. And so, I don't know, a couple months later, I had an interview at Disney and there were people playing hacky sack all over the place. It was hilarious. So, yeah. So they were, they were in a bad way at that moment. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, I had a similar report from a friend, but by that time I was already working at Warner Brothers animated series. And a friend of mine had migrated to doing features at Disney. And I was just doing TV storyboards. And I asked him, it's like, so what's the work like? Oh yeah, I get a sequence. Okay, what's a sequence? That's just a movie moment. Oh, it's just like our sequences in TV. Oh yeah, okay, all right. So it's just cut transition to transition. Right. Okay. Great. And then I'll give you 1 week, and then I'll work on it for 6 weeks. 6 weeks? You get to work on one moment? Yeah. And then they'll look at it and they'll give me 3 more weeks. What? Yeah. But you're paid more. Yes. Wait, I want that too. Because I don't get paid. I was already by then directing at Warner Brothers and on Freakazoid. And then I'm feeling like, well, I'd like to do less work for a lot longer time, for a lot more pay. And by then, there was rumors of that they're going to get paid more because DreamWorks was about to happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that happened at a lot of things. But anyway, you were saying that you heard rumblings of Little Mermaid.
Yeah. Rumblings of Little Mermaid. And by then I was working at DIC at DIC. On a little, very low budget show. It's my introduction to animation, which I know nothing about. I didn't study it. Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about animating. I wouldn't know what animating on 2s, 4s. I don't know what a slug is. I don't know what timing is. Mm-hmm. I don't know what 16 frames meant.
Yeah.
Nothing. Completely. For 2.5 months I worked at DIC and I had a crash course. A friend of mine who's French, Sylvain Dupré, who I met when I landed in the U.S., who is a master storyboard artist for live action movies. Mm-hmm. The classiest guy you could ever meet, was very, very gracious to me and giving me advice, kind of like, you should do this, you should do that. We met at Neil Adams' Continuity Studio.
Oh, okay.
And Burbank, because Neil has a New York setup first, but he has a branch in Burbank. I know about that outfit because of one, comic books. It's Neil Adams. Mm-hmm. The other is the advertising, because he's in the annuals of advertising. Even in the Philippines, I knew about it. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that he was in Burbank, where I was living with my parents, and then I answered an ad, a newspaper ad, and then I showed up, and they gave me a few freelance jobs, and I started becoming more prolific, and they hired me outright. But it's not a well-run outfit. Neil even invited me to do comics for him, and I felt like, I don't think so, Neil. I'm not really a good comic book artist. I like playing at it. That's what you're seeing, but I'm not a real comic book artist. And he's just like, nah, you don't. Doesn't matter.
What can I ask you? Why you think you're not a real comic book artist? What is it about comic book art?
Because making comics is hard. It looks a lot like a lot of fun, but it's a long slog to do 22 pages of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then also having worked with Neil in his little studio, I knew I didn't want to work with Neil.
Sure.
I just felt like, I don't know if I want to do this at all. I don't want to work for you doing comic books. It's enough that I'm already doing ad work and comps and movie poster comps for you, but I really shouldn't. And Sylvain advised me, so I was like, you're too good for this place. You should get out. And then I worked with his friend, Sylvain. Sylvain introduced me to Stéphane Martinier, who's working at Deke. And he started teaching me just kind of the basics of animation TV production,
mm-hmm.
which I had to learn while on the job. I got the knack of it. And by then, 2.5 months later, the show ended. And then I ended up at Warner Brothers working on Batman, the animated series. Based on 2.5 months of experience, where people take whole 4-year courses on animation, I was working on the most sought-after job in animation.
That was at the time.
In Burbank.
Yeah.
And they weren't hiring.
Wow.
I brought my portfolio, which is nothing. You couldn't tell if anything at all that I could do. And I just did my best effort to put a portfolio together. They interviewed me on a Monday. By Wednesday, you're hired. And I knew that they weren't hiring because in the industry buzz, which back then before the internet, now you better not even leave your portfolio there. It's just going to stay there because they're not looking.
Right.
I dropped off my portfolio because I had no leads. I might as well just leave it there. And then they called me back. And then Bruce Timm asks me, so what do you want to do? And I said, character design. And then he said, nah, you'll do storyboards. And I have not done a full storyboard ever before. But he hired me. And I learned on the job. I made a lot of mistakes. But I learned a lot of kind of the principles, the cinematic language. And on the show of Batman the Animated Series, the standards were very high. But I couldn't compare that to any other show because it's other than the one that I was in, which is very low level. By the time that you go to Batman, it's like, wow. I wonder if all jobs are like this. Like they're not. But that show was not only very daring, but it gave me the permission to be a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
As I learned.
Sure.
We were dealing with dramatics, difficulties the characters are facing, and then moods, as well as comedy and staging. You own everything because you're a little director as you're a storyboard artist.
Sure.
And then, of course, I work with the best. I work not only with Bruce, I work with Paul Dini, and then the workshopping happens, which I didn't understand what was happening.
Sure.
Riffing.
Sure. I want to stop you because I want to go back a ways. We'll get back here. We'll come back here. I still want to know what your influences were.
They were only illustrators back in the day. I wanted to be Bernie Fuchs.
Okay.
I felt like if I could be a magazine illustrator, that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But then when comics showed up in my life, I wanted to. I had wanted to be Neil.
Okay.
But then after that, I felt like, I'm kind of over that. I wanted to be Bill Sienkiewicz.
Sure.
Right. And then
I still want to be Bill Sienkiewicz.
I would love to be Bill Sienkiewicz. His turn on the New Mutants was just so mind-blowing.
It was amazing. Yeah.
It was just still to this day, if I find a copy of the Demon Bear saga, I would buy it all over.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It is. It's amazing. And then, of course, as Frank Miller's work on Daredevil and Batman made you understand that my writer friends in the Philippines were kind of like, we can write this.
Mm-hmm.
We can make moments like this. This is great. This is not your grandfather's comics. And then in terms of film, because in the Philippines, the movies actually file into a line at the theaters. I was always in movies. I will beg, borrow, or steal to watch movies.
Mm-hmm.
The best theaters are 2 hours away from me in my small town.
Hmm.
And I will ride 3 buses to be able to get to a screening. One of my favorite ones, I brought my little brother back then, and it was for Alien.
Oh yeah, sure.
And we watched it because of the twitchy trailer that ended up being aired on TV, and just like, oh, gotta watch it. And then we watch it, and then we came out of the theater. It was about 4 or 3 in the afternoon, and me being the older brother, I'm wondering, it's like, I want to buy another ticket and go back in there and watch it again.
Yeah.
Of course, Rick, my brother, is like would probably do what I say, but then I ask him, it's like, you want to do it? It's like, yeah. So we watched 2 screenings of it because we both read sci-fi. All the brothers did, Rick, Louie, and I. And we love sci-fi. We love movies. So all the movies that come from the U.S., you get to watch a lot of them. And because they don't just happen all at once, they kind of like file in one at a time. And then the programming in the Philippines, and there's only 4 channels, and at least 2 channels that are American programming that aired American programming TV, but also old movies, American International, all the classic Westerns, even movies that really shouldn't be shown on TV, but the censors didn't know about it back then. Midnight Cowboy would be on.
Wow.
And that's a rated X movie.
Yeah, it is.
Right? And yet they kind of, they snipped just the part that were offending them, but the subject matter was really, really powerfully, kind of like intense.
Yeah.
Movies like Deliverance, you would watch that and you were like 9 or 10.
Yeah, that's probably not the best for a 9.
It's not, right?
Yeah.
But you also get to watch movies like one of my favorites was like The Lion in Winter.
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh my God, that movie still affects me to this day. And then The Man Who Would Be King.
Right.
Those kinds of movies, you didn't know you were actually studying movies.
Right. So you were just as a fan. When I knew when I was 5, I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I was always studying. So I was obsessed with movies in exactly the same way, but I always knew that I was learning. It was like I was in school.
No, not for me, because the most fascinating thing to me is because I loved animation, even especially The Wonderful World of Color. Mm-hmm. I would feel very distraught if it wasn't aired. And by the time it showed up in the Philippines, it's kind of like a couple of years old. It's probably a copy that came from the U.S. naval bases that the TV station had gotten. And they would air them as faithfully as they can. And then there would be days when they would drop it and I would be distraught.
Yeah.
I love The Wonderful World of Color, and I love animation, and I love cartoons. But I just love them as a fan of watching animation. The idea that they were made by human beings never entered my mind as a kid.
Okay.
And the idea, if it actually did, that it was made by human beings, it never entered my mind that I would ever want to make them. No, I don't think I ever want to make cartoons. I like drawing, but no, that's not for me.
Was it just too impossible to conceive of, or was it? It
is impossible to conceive of where I was. I was living, again, 2 hours away from Manila, and everyone surrounding me is like, there was be about 3 or 4 comic book fans in my whole little town.
Sure.
Great comic books. And then paperbacks, you would have to travel 2 hours away to buy them.
Wow. Now, where did you get comic books? Did you get them at like a...
You would get them, again, 2 hours away in Manila, and they would be kind of these newsstands, and they were kind of the comic books that the U.S. servicemen had carried with them and then dropped off, and then somebody would wrap them in plastic, and they would show up in the newsstands.
Okay.
So they were kind of well-worn. My first Hulk comic book I ever bought had a missing, signature. I didn't know how the story ended. I bought serialized stories in analog, where in the last entry was I could never find. It was a George R.R. Martin story. I searched for that high and low. I just loved it. That's the kind of existence. These people who create stories and entertainment, literature, art, they lived in not only another country, they might as well have lived in another planet.
Sure.
There's no one who actually does art around me. There's no one who could talk to you about art. And if there was, they are living kind of this very low level existence. That by the time that I actually enrolled in an advertising course, fine arts, that was the most number of people in one place that were actually holding pencils and paint and doing something that felt like, how was this a secret? Why was this kept from me? Because I lived 2 hours away. It's almost provincial.
Sure.
And also because of TV and movies, and friends of mine who were Army Navy brats of the U.S. Navy, I understood how to ape an American cadence of speaking English as opposed to the Philippines way of speaking English.
Sure, yeah.
So they sounded like the people on TV.
Right.
My friends.
Okay.
So when I hung around them, I get to kind of like sound like the people on TV.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like, I can get to kind of like banter with them. I had no idea what I was doing. But
was that helpful though when you immigrated to?
It was very helpful because because being such a big movie fan and a big TV fan and cartoon fan, I kind of know enough about Americana to be able to talk to my friends who had grown up in the States, but they were Filipinos, and they welcomed me in. They kind of like, you're kind of one of us. Right. So I kind of like hung out with those guys. Kind of like, and this was like 14, 15. And I'm like, and but I was also we were really poor. Father lost everything. So so they would get together and they would say, it's like, hey, you want to come and join us for this? It's like, I can't because I can't go to a party. I don't have a car. You guys, and I don't have clothes. And
right.
Like, nobody cares. Yeah, it's easy for you to say, but I'm going to be. Yeah. So, but then when I graduated from high school, and another side story that we should have a talk about is like I worked on Apocalypse Now as a 16 years old, looking for work. I was there for a couple of months working in a team of painters, but I was also the youngest one, so there was discrimination. Anyway. So by the time I leapfrog over that, because that's a big story.
Sure.
When I landed in Manila, trying to do odd jobs here and there, and then eventually get into school, the people in school, because it's a private school, it costs money to get into school. To get into school, there's a stratification, just like anywhere. There's the status in economics. Because of the way I carry myself, having kind of hung around a lot of these U.S. Navy brats, and the way I speak, which doesn't sound like American, it doesn't sound like Filipino English. I sounded like I went to an international school.
Right.
Or I had come from the States.
Right.
And that because I know kind of the campfire of movies and TV that they banter about. And I thought nothing of doing that because I used to do it with my friends who knew exactly what my history is. So they would get to ask, it's kind of like, so what part of the States did you come from? And I'm like, well, actually, never been to the States at all. What? Really? No, I've been here all my life. No, not at all. Never. And then when they invite me to go places, I still demur. No, sorry, can't. Yeah. Can't do it. Why? Got a thing. Because they live in big houses. They live in estates, and they have chauffeurs.
Yeah.
There would be people who would kind of like, we'll pick you up. Oh, no. It's okay. You guys go ahead. I'll see you in school.
Right.
But being around creating art and being around people who have the boundaries that I gave myself as a young person kind of got opened up because people welcomed me, and then welcomed me to kind of participate because you sound like you can do this. Right. Why don't you do this? You should. Okay. That follows me all the way to the US, that someone like Bruce Timm would say, or Stefan, in the first place, I know you don't have experience. I think you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what, I wonder? And then when Bruce tells me, it's like, you're going to do storyboards. Based on this portfolio, I wouldn't hire me with this. And then all the way up to being a director, going to DreamWorks.
What do you think they saw? What do you think they saw?
I can only speculate because I'm not very good at being. I can't self-examine very well because I don't know, because you're inside yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they felt that they saw enough of this personality that probably lights up and talks about this thing that I can see, and feel.
I have a former student, a friend of mine, and she's going through this right now, and she doesn't know why she's getting certain opportunities, and she doesn't feel ready.
Yes.
And first of all, you never feel ready. And
you're never ready.
You're never ready. You never feel ready, right? Other people usually recognize that before you do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But the other thing is that I have seen, and maybe you've seen this with younger people who are coming up, and you see them. There's not always the ability, but the passion for the thing is bigger. That matters more. There's sort of enthusiasm to get it right, because they can learn all the other things, but they can't learn that.
Yes. Right.
And so, I wonder if that's what they saw, a sort of passion.
Yeah, you may be right, because when I do advise people, I say it's like, there's a lot about what I do that you could probably pick up just watching a few YouTubes,
mm-hmm.
or pick up a book. But the very thing that makes anyone a musician, an artist, a puppeteer,
mm-hmm.
That's hard to come by. I can't find them everywhere.
They're not everywhere.
They're not everywhere. Yeah. They're not everywhere. And not only that, because I interview people who want to work in this industry or in Pixar. And then I always ask them, it's like, don't show me your portfolio of work you've done for other people. I want you to show me what the work that you do for yourself. And then it was like, really? Yeah, I want you to bring your sketchbooks. And then let's talk. And then after that, I'm notorious at Pixar for trying to scare people from taking the job.
That's actually good. I get that. I can see why you would do that.
I do. I do, because I feel like this is one of those things that, because it's frustrating work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only frustrating work; it hurts.
Right.
Very painful.
What is it about? What's painful about it?
The painful part of what I would say that has been required of me, and then also I require of myself when I'm working on anything that I care about, like a movie, a feature. I am dedicated to actually kind of doing this every day,
mm-hmm.
but the investment, what you actually put forth on the table in front of everybody else, is a piece of you.
Yep. Yeah.
Your craft, your life, your thoughts, all bare.
Yeah.
And it gets swiped away right away. No waiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it lives for a few more minutes, count yourself lucky, and then it will die. If it lives for another day, count yourself lucky, it will die. It may be in the movie for 3 years, and then one day we'll cut it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, that's really painful. And it's interesting that you talk about that, because that makes people very protective, right? So they don't put their best work. They don't put their best work out because they're afraid of that.
They're afraid of that.
Right.
And then because of that, because I tend to ask them what their creative journeys are, and because it will sting and it will hurt, it'll frustrate, it'll make you wonder, who am I following into these war zones and taking hills for? Where it seems like we're aimless, we're wandering, lost, and we're solving things that doesn't seem to need solving. Why are we doing this? You will wonder. If you've never done this to this extent before, you will just hate this. And it will eat at you. It will erode the very reason you even do this thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And then if that is somehow true about the candidate when I'm talking to them. Because I will tell you that there are days when you're wondering, it's like, should I shoot myself in the foot so I can get transferred out of this?
Right.
Because I was in the hospital and I don't have to do this thing.
Right.
Because it's painful. It's that painful sometimes and frustrating. And the reason that I am here and then a lot of these other people are walking around here is because, not because they found a way to work around that, not because that doesn't exist in certain times of the year. No, it's always there. It is because the very thing that actually irritates and kind of gives you pain and the very thing that actually frustrates you every day, inside that is the very thing that actually delivers to you what you enjoy about doing this job.
Right. Right.
Right in there. And then the kind of miner's luck, getting one little nugget of something is enough to stay in for years. Why would that be a commensurate balance? I don't know. But that is how I'm struck these days. I will go and mine for those things, fail every freaking day, and then actually faceplant in front of a lot of people.
Right.
Right? And then not only that, feel like I'm actually going backwards.
Yeah.
But when you actually do something that actually kind of sticks in there, I've kind of found a way to say something just in the right way, and it stays, that is worth hanging on for.
Yeah.
But if that coin actually doesn't buy anything in your world, you shouldn't be here.
Right. Right.
Because I will watch you wither. I will watch you get eaten up from inside, and then I will watch you leave.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because I think that what people don't understand when you're doing creative work that is meant to be emotional, that is meant to evoke emotion. I didn't understand when I started how much bravery it took to do that.
Yes, you're right.
Right? I didn't understand. Yeah. It's like, actors talk about being brave. You're like, how can that, you're pretending to be so, how can that be brave? But it's completely brave. You're completely sort of emotionally naked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you got a bulge over here and a thing over here, like you don't like, and the closer you can get to stripping away anything you would use to protect yourself, the deeper you can dig, the better that work will be. Yeah. But the more at risk you are.
Yes. That never changes. That risk part, you wish that all the professional years that you put in can kind of be an antidote to that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You are not special.
Yeah.
No matter how many years you put in.
Yeah.
You are at the same line as everybody else. I was like, no, I can have delusional days when I feel like I'm doing great.
Right.
But that falls apart the next day.
Right. It's also interesting that sometimes what I found is that the work that comes easily where I'm having the most fun is often not the best work.
Not the best work.
The best work comes when I'm like, this sucks and this is awful and I don't know what I'm doing. And then everybody's like, that thing is amazing. And I'm like, that thing?
Yes.
That? You know what I mean? Where it was so hard to do. And that's really proof that your job is to really just show up and do the work.
Oh, yeah.
If that's it. And you don't know how people are going to receive it. You just have to show up. And even when it's hard, even when it's not coming, I was writing something and I was struggling with something. And somebody said, oh, you're waiting for inspiration. I'm like, I can't do that. That's not my job. I don't get paid to wait around for inspiration. So I have to produce no matter what's happening.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes that's your best work. That stuff that seems like, it's a strange thing.
It is. And that's why the critique that we've gotten from most people who don't know the process, why does it take so long to make a Pixar movie? And it's like, well, a long time ago, we've left the idea that we know what we were doing. Because of just the preponderance of evidence says that no matter how smart we are, or how many of these we've made, we end up in the same hole.
Mm-hmm.
And none of our best instincts and skills actually solves it. All the time, it never is just because we were great, we were facile. Doesn't solve it. And then it seems like the gods of storytelling want to put you through 3 years at minimum. Hell. To arrive at some notion that you had 3 years ago that was at the center of why you even went on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
But now, 3 years later, you actually understand it better.
Oh, that's an interesting way to think about it.
Because you're still trying to tell the same story. Its meaning now is not only meaningful to you, but there's a lot of you that you, and this is not a part of the conversation, we do not want to put ourselves in our movies because that's risking too much.
Right.
No, I know. For 3 years, you struggled that this isn't about you. This can't be about you. It shouldn't be. No. And then all of a sudden, it's like, fuck, man, this is about us. You and me making this movie.
Right.
It's about me and my daughter. It's about me and my friends. It's
Right.
about what I can't get past.
Mm-hmm.
That every day in the sifting through all of these things and the collective decisions that we weren't minding, what shows up on the screen? Well, look at that. That's us, huh? That's it.
Yeah.
And then you wonder, why does this resonate with other people? Well, it came from you.
Right.
Inside you, all of the little micro choices that you made, from lighting to where the desk is placed, and what kind of arm pose and hand pose, is coming from a place that has to not only be instant, but it is authentically you.
Right.
By the time it shows up, people recognize there's authorship in it.
They also recognize one of the things I tell people about bearing your soul
Yeah.
on the page or wherever is that a strange thing happens. You're afraid that people are going to see me when I do this. They're going to see me, right?
Yes.
But what happens is they don't see you at all. They see themselves.
Yeah.
That's the weird part, is that they recognize the humanity. Like, oh, that's, in fact, they're more likely to think, how did that person know that about me? How did they know that about me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You disappear. The more you put yourself out there, the more you disappear.
Yeah. That is an amazing thing. And yet it would be the hardest thing to go against your native instinct to not put yourself in there. Like in the beginning of the story, it's like, oh, no, this isn't about me. I'm crafting stories all the time where I'm feeling, I know I made these pieces of myself, but I don't need to throw in all the pieces.
Right, yeah.
Not all of it should be in there. And then the longer I'm in there, it's just like, well, darn it, it's about me. And then that struggle, if you have writing partners and collaborators, they're the ones who see it in the room.
Right, yeah.
And they see you struggle with it. They tell you kind of like, isn't this about you and your daughter when she had a fight? No. No, it's not. But they will be able to tell your friends will be able to tell you this is what this is about.
I had an interesting experience after my brother was murdered, and after he was murdered.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. After he was murdered, I didn't. I was numb for a while about it, and I was used to be this big tree in my neighborhood on my street. This huge tree gave a lot of shade. This just massive tree. I don't know how old this tree was. The owner of the house one day decided to cut it down. And I was so angry that tree was cut down. I'm like, it was displaced. Like, why would you cut down that tree? That tree, then I realized it was not about the tree.
It's not about the tree.
But not about the tree.
Mm.
And that I was displacing. I couldn't feel that way about my brother's murder for some reason, but I could do it about this tree.
Yes.
Everything I was feeling about that tree was exactly
it was easier for that to happen. And because you can allow yourself the other avenue.
Yeah.
And that is kind of those are the kind of moments you want to earn in telling these stories.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't just throw it in there.
No, you have to earn it. That's an interesting thing. I tell people that all the time.
Yeah.
They think they can throw something in because it's emotional, but it doesn't work. It doesn't
work.
Cheap. You do have to earn it.
Yeah, and it lands completely cheap. And you not only didn't earn it, the story never actually went there.
Yep.
You just threw it in there. But my notion of not only not earning it is that you felt that it was a solution. It's not. When you're making these stories, they don't come as like, wouldn't this be the moment wherein you throw in this emotional kill? Because I do it, and because you ask me, I'm going to put something in there, and it doesn't work.
Right.
Why? Because not only didn't we earn it in the story wasn't pointing there. It was glib. It was facile, and but we ourselves have not suffered enough.
Mm-hmm.
We've not actually suffered enough to deserve that moment as the storytellers. And that when you are on your first, second draft, or third screening, you are still working on your best moods.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is what you're known for.
Oh, right.
You can still deliver all of those. You can still, I got lots of reserves. I can keep putting all of my best moves in there.
Right.
When all of that is depleted, you don't have any more. Now, we're still the same. It's still the same story. This is the story we're telling. What else do you have? That is an amazing challenge that if you've never actually done this process before, not only is it like really humbling, but it's mystical.
Mm-hmm.
The award had, to me, it was like, I don't need trophies. I don't need anything that would, you had actually done the creative journey to the hilt. No, I don't need to, because I got rewarded by this mystical journey of not having anything anymore. And that in that darkest of moments when you have nothing and it's despair, that you manage to actually walk back and kind of try and find something else that is now, because no artifice, something shows up and it doesn't look like anything.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like much.
Right.
But at that moment, it is the one thing that feels like it should be there. And then, okay.
Because it's authentic.
Yes. Right? And then not only that, I wonder now if I deserve all the other parts. And you still have to do more.
Right.
It is so mystical that I've done this so many times that even though I struggle with it, I know that I go home and I feel like we're not even halfway through this mystical journey yet. We still have to pay a lot more blood, sweat, and tears. And then when it does actually happen, you don't see it when it was happening. Because you're so used to just going, that only in an audience preview, when there's an audience who's not made the journey with you, watch it. And they get carried by these characters.
Right.
That now you feel like I can give myself a little exhale to say, that was almost worth all the misery. Almost.
Well, you know, I when I'm teaching, when I used to teach longer classes that would go on for weeks, and you know, a lot of my classes had improv in them, and even though people thought they were in a writing class, so they'd like, I'm in a writing class. Why are you having us do this? And I would have people get in front of people and do things that could be embarrassing, some character work and some things like that. And I would see people try, and I didn't make people do it. I was not going to force anybody to do this, right? So I would see people, some people would volunteer. I would urge them strongly to do it, but some people would volunteer and do it. Some people would not do it. And what I would say to them is that you think that standing in front of people and doing this in a classroom setting where everybody's going to go through it, it's not, everybody's supportive, right? It's the easiest way to do this, right? Where everybody's risking the same thing.
Yeah.
So you have sort of training wheels on in that situation, and that's too much for you. If you feel like that's too much for you, you will not be able to do it on the page. And it's just as hard on the page. It's not easier on the page. I think people think, well, I'm anonymous. I'm in my room or whatever, and I'm just it's anonymous. It's like, no, but it goes out to people, and people are going to see it, and it's the same feeling as standing in front of people, and it's the same feeling. So if you can't do that, then you can't do the other thing. If you can't, it's just an interesting thing. I mean, I had one student who refused to get up. She had very bad stage fright, very shy person. And, but I don't know, a year or two later, she took like a full-on improv class and like threw herself into it. And very, very proud of her for doing that, because I know how hard that was. But that's only going to make her work better. It's only going to make her work better. And I don't know if people understand how much emotional work there is in doing something. They don't draw or whatever.
Yes, leave me alone and to draw. I've said that many times vocally and in my head. Please just leave me alone and draw. That was my first reaction in animated features at DreamWorks, when they gave me the script, and then I drew the script, and then they told me you have to pitch it. I'm thinking it's like it's already in drawings. And then there's the dialogue lines. You can read it. Why do I have to get a stick, point at the drawing, and read the lines? Because that's the way it's done, Ronnie. I was like, God, I don't want to do that. Because I don't want to stand in front of people. But that's what everybody else does, so you're going to have to do it. So I suffered through that and bombed many times, completely. Hate it. I just hate doing this thing. But because everybody was doing it, it kind of became normal, but I was terrible at it. And I started aping everybody who was doing it.
Right.
But then also part of it, because DreamWorks wants to be a real feature animation studio, they gave us improv classes and acting classes. And I said, see, more than pitching in front of people in a sequence where I drew, I really hate that.
Right. Yeah.
I really do not want that.
Yeah.
But they forced me to do it, so I had to do it. And the improv classes, what I felt like was ridiculous. And then the teacher, which I felt like, why did they bring this old lady who's really crabby to teach us this system that she's teaching? Meisner.
Oh, sure.
And I hated it. And then the exercise is to sit in front of someone and repeat mindless 3-word sentences to each other.
Right. You're wearing glasses, right? You're wearing glasses. You're wearing glasses.
Your shirt is black. My shirt is black.
Right.
Your shirt's gray. My shirt's gray.
Great, yeah.
Lunchtime. I'm forgoing a lunchtime. I could be buying comic books.
Yeah.
And then one day, this teacher told us, and we just suffered through it. One day the teacher actually says, like, okay, so here's an exercise she's not trying to break through. So it's like, you are a mental, about to be entered into a mental institution today. And you should pack your bags. That's it. Yes. Here's a bag, just a prop. Pretend that you're putting your clothes in it. Okay. People did it. Even the heads of story did it.
Yeah.
And then, well, that person is on stage, so to speak. It's just a small room in a DreamWorks. She would say, it's like, I want you to watch. Just watch. And then there was one person, I forget who it was, that I kind of like, it was just flicker.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people would like do the acting, right?
Right.
Act it.
Right.
And then she would adjust everybody.
Right.
And then there was that one moment I felt like, and then she would ask, did you see something in any of this? It's like, I didn't say it to her, but I did. I saw something.
Mm-hmm.
And then while you're doing the back and forth, she was always talking to the audience. Did you see something like? And then it's like, and she, with my partner, she asked, it's like, okay, stop, you two. What's going on with you? What do you mean? What's happening between you two? And then my partner is just like, he says, we don't like each other. He doesn't like me. And it's like, I almost wanted to say, that's true, I don't like you. Because what she's telling the audience, which is also the other story artist, is like, that is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The words mean anything.
Right.
They are mindless.
Yeah.
That is what we didn't want you to act. You were just being yourself. And then and I'm thinking, what?
Yeah.
So the way that you're saying about improv and acting classes, and the teacher was Susan Anspach,
Mm-hmm.
5 Easy Pieces. She knows what she was doing.
Right.
She's just unwilling prisoners who doesn't know anything.
Right.
And then by the time I took another class at Pixar as the directing for actors, I got roped into it thinking, oh, I can direct actors and learn from Judith Weston.
Oh, Judith is great.
She's great.
I love
She's
Judith.
awesome.
Yeah.
I got lured in there by that little carrot and felt like, I get to know how to direct actors. Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah, but then she makes you act.
And then it's an acting class. And I feel like I'm going to chew my foot to get out of this trap so I don't have to act. But she made me act in a scene and memorize lines, the final, wherein I had learned my lines. I learned it with my partner separately, and then together, kind of like we kind of knew. And then when it was time to actually perform, and this is informative for I tell this to story artists all the time, time for the day, where this is you and your partner's day. Okay, we enter stage, and then Ronnie, here, stay here with me. Let's stay with Judith. It's like, your partner's already on stage. I just wanted to tell you, good luck out there. That's strange. What was that moment with Judith? And then I go on stage and I just go through the whole thing. It's my wife and I are there, and she's going to tell me about something about we're having differences of opinion about one issue, but we're in the house, and we're gonna encounter invisible props of the kitchen and the cupboard, and then the sofa, and I was, because she gave us tools on how to memorize scripts, so I kind of like marvelously know what I'm saying.
Yeah, she gives you really good tools.
Tools. I got tools of also kind of like listening, which is great. It was like, I'm never going to be an actor, because I felt like at that moment it was hot information and I couldn't apply it. It's great. But then when the scene was done, all of it, the audience, which is comprised of all the other students at Pixar, then I heard them. They were laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy laughing. And this wasn't a comedy.
Right.
Moment. And they were hilarious. They were rolling and they were pointing at me. And then by then I started noticing that there were lights on me, and that was always there. You've been on the stages in the one of the green or the blue room, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what is going on? And then Judith comes up and sits in front of me. I'm so sorry. I pulled a trick on you. What? This role is between you and your wife. I told your acting partner to play it as your mother.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Now, all of my native feelings about how my mother frustrates me showed up.
Right.
And that's why they were laughing.
Right.
And I feel like, whoa, I disappeared.
Yeah.
I was in that. The audience disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even an actor. I was like, And then I can only say, it's like, when does that, I know that feeling. I disappear when I'm writing and drawing.
Mm-hmm.
The time goes away. The walls disappear.
Yeah.
I don't know what time it is.
Yeah.
I can't hear anything. I can't access reality. There's just this ball.
Yeah.
And it's alive. I feel like, oh, why aren't people doing this more? This is amazing. Wait, no wonder you act.
Right.
You can be this. It's like a magic trick. It's like you can turn into some other person, completely be in a different place, in a different world.
Yeah.
Amazing. What a revelation. And it helped my writing, helped me as a director.
Sure, of course.
Helped me as a creator.
Yeah.
Helps me all over the place. That felt like, why, when some magic happens on screen, we feel that it was not, of course, it's artificial, but the reason you fall in love, you have fear, you feel dread, you feel excitement, elation, rising of emotion, is because these people were going through it. We just pointed a camera at them.
Right.
Caught it. What was happening?
Right. Well, you're getting at a truth, right?
Yeah.
When you tell the truth, people will respond.
Yeah.
That's why when you don't earn the emotion, you're not telling the truth.
You're not. You're pushing it out there.
Yeah, but you're not telling the truth.
And then nobody will feel like, I don't know, I like it, but I don't know if it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, something I like to quote is that the idea that people think that drama is when people on the screen or on the stage cry, but drama is when the people in the audience cry.
Yes, you're right.
Right. And that's a big difference, right?
Yes.
Because they think they're doing something if somebody's yelling or somebody's crying or and they haven't earned anything. And you see that a lot on TV. I've noticed there's a lot of yelling on television.
Yes.
Because it looks like conflict.
Yeah.
But conflict doesn't have to be yelling.
No.
Right?
No.
It can be very quiet. It can be but like on TV, they yell a lot. And I'm like, oh, they're pretending that this is drama. They don't actually have real drama happening, so they need to yell at each other.
Yes.
To pretend that they have drama.
And because they have a little time. And then also it becomes disposable as a moment.
Yeah.
You can probably reach a certain level of emotion and feeling about it, but you can also kind of walk away from it. A good moment like that in a movie kind of hangs with you for a while.
Right.
And it makes you feel like, yeah, I'm trying to have dinner, for God's sakes, and it's still stuck in your head.
Yeah.
Or kind of like, why is that still a little engine that keeps working?
So I left Batman to talk about this stuff, but I want to go back to Batman, not because to talk about Batman, but I want to talk about the things you learned in these places, like who you learned from and what you learned from them.
Yeah, well, I learned from like directors there, like Dick Sebast, and who was very patient, knows about cinematic language, and then also learned from Bruce because of how kind of native it is for him to actually like follow his bliss about this is what I like, this is what I draw, this is what I'm passionate about. It shows up in his work, whereas a lot of us don't give ourselves permission to do that.
Oh, right.
Right, because what Bruce was doing was uniquely his.
That's
right?
true.
And then to kind of feel that you need to kind of not only ask permission, but it needs to look like something else.
Right.
It was kind of easy for us to kind of shelter. Kind of like, yeah, well, I draw like that person. I do comedy this way. I do the. So you almost like gain kind of these permissions to be able to do that, even though it's not you necessarily.
Right.
So with kind of hanging out with Bruce and then also learning cinematic language from some of the more formidable directors who are very, very open and honest about why things are done or why they are good at telling stories, to use these tools. There's that they allowed me to kind of nurture what is native about my style, which I didn't think I had. because I can ape anybody, because that's best practice for me as someone who wants to be hired, was to become everybody.
Okay, sure.
And then by the beginning of that journey at Warner Brothers was that we tended to talk about comics and movies, and we would close the door in his office. When I knock, and he goes like, "What?" He's like Ren from Ren and Stimpy. I crack open the door, and so like, "Come in, close the door." And you sit there, and then he's drawing, not work for the show, but he's drawing like pinup so he can bring it to San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, sure.
And then he goes like, "Take a look at this." And I was like, "Wow, that's awesome. Wait, you did that hand kind of like this style of like, yeah, I know." It was like so I was like, "Not too much." I was like, and then he would like retouch it a little more. It's like, and then we would draw communally, right, together and all that. But it made like, this is also work,
right?
Grade stuff that he was doing. And when he was doing stuff that he enjoys, he's procrastinating on all the scripts and storyboards he wants to do. But that kind of passion also migrates to work.
Right.
So when we do our storyboards, we draw them as if they were comic books. We would ink them. We would do shading. I would do like zipatone on them because we love to be able to put the dramatics in there, even if it doesn't quite translate eventually. But some of it does. So that by the time it became time for me to try my hand at comics, which is that Alien book, Dark Horse, I wanted to see, can I become an artist, finally become one. And that was my kind of like, that was the testing ground for me to be able to see, can I, because the narrative in comics is very, very delicate. You can do too much very easily. And so I had to start and restart. But by the time that Mondo Heat, the second installment of that, came, I just wanted to have as much fun with my friend Henry Gilroy, who was writing it. What are the things that makes us feel happy? Let's just put it all in there. And that's what we did. That's what we just like, have fun. And because I'm a big Jack Cole fan, I had his pages in front of me, all the Plastic Man kind of takes, and Betty and Veronica.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. All of those things. It was like, I'm going to have fun, because the way Bruce has fun making comic books, I'm just going to have fun and just kind of, and then because they give me a lot of latitude, my writer partners, that it's really a workshop. So I kind of like, I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this there. There's a moment here I think is good, and like, let's have my work with Paul Dini on my Batman Black and Whites with him. It's like that. It's kind of like, we gab about it, we talk about it. And it's like I'll send you the page, what I think is happening. Do whatever you want. And then I do whatever I want.
So in terms of that, the freedom to be yourself, how does that manifest itself in your job every day?
Well, the thing about that, because you get enough reinforcement from other people, you feel that it's your right to do. Because there'll be a lot of times where you could probably work for different people and he won't let you do that.
Right.
You have to turn into them.
Right.
Or do it their way.
Right.
Right. Yeah, you know you're working for the wrong people.
Right.
When it's that case. But because the best work I do tends to become the ones wherein I mine from myself.
Yeah.
Solves writing and creative moments in the movies.
Right.
They see it, right? I don't see it. I don't know when it's happening. But when they see it, they put it in the movie.
Right.
So by the time I joined DreamWorks, not knowing anything about the job and failing left and right for about a year, I had been drawing a part of Prince of Egypt that started with me and came back about a year later again. It's the same scene. And I bombed royally on it. In front of Jeffrey, the 3 producers, 3 directors, 2 heads of stories, editorial. I was like, man, I really suck at this. I'm terrible. It's just because even though there's a writer and there's heads of stories, there are producers and directors who are involved in making the script, by the time I pitch it, it's almost as if I'm the one responsible for it.
Right.
Why am I responsible for this? You guys made this. It confounded me.
Sure.
And then a year later, here it comes again. And it's not even a script this time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a beat outline of what's happening, what happened before, what happens after. I feel like this is a sucker punch. I'm going to be walking in there with essentially nothing. And then, because they couldn't give me any more scripts because the writers are kind of engaged and the production is going on and the directors are doing and the heads of story, do what you need to do. Which I feel like, well, I have no idea what that is. So all I could do was like, well, I know the setting, I know the moment, and then it percolates with me for a couple of days. And then one day I just decided that I started putting Ramesses on top of the lap of one of those giant statues, those Anubis statues.
Uh-huh.
And I put him in there to mope. I put him in there not only to mope, but to hide, because my brothers and I would hide from my mother when she's looking for us, and we would hide from in the guava tree right next to our house, and we can look down.
Uh-huh.
So when she's screaming for the boys, we were always outside, getting dirty, playing games that we shouldn't be playing.
Sure.
And then when it's time to wash up, you can hear my mom scream both our names, and the whole neighborhood can hear you. You got your voice carries. But we had the secret thrill that we're hanging on the branches, looking at mom losing her mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would sneak down and then go to the other end of the house and go inside. And then kind of like, what was the matter? We were hitting she hates that. And we were doing it.
Uh-huh.
So I create the story for Ramesses to have done this when they were kids. They would hide from dad and hide on top of those, and then the whole palace would be looking for the two princes, and nobody can find them because it feels like, well, because what we did was we kind of vandalized some of the statues that the priests were, venerating. They know it's us, and they're tattletaling on dad, and dad feels like, bring me the two princes, and they can't find them. But he has other business at stake. He's going to forget, and we're going to get away with it. That's the story that
Right.
But it's not in the movie.
Right.
So I played the scene of Moses coming in, looking for his brother, but also understanding that no one in the palace can find him. I know where he is. So he doesn't say anything. And he goes over, and then the scene is being played out in my mind is like walking into this gallery of statues. And then he starts talking like a madman to himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I remember the day wherein dad was so angry with us that everybody was looking and the priests were going to be wanting us to be punished. And then he started musing out loud and laughing. Moses was just laughing, as kind of like, almost like, and then when dad caught up with us, he started ringing you out. But there was no one there. It's as if he's practicing talking, and then the statue answers back.
Mm-hmm.
When the statue answers back, you're wondering, what? And then his head peeks out. And it was like, like how much trouble you got me in that day. Dad actually lectured me for hours on that, but it was actually your idea. I know. What were you doing following me? So it felt like I created the dialogue, I created the moment, and it felt like, and then once and then Ramesses melted and started laughing. Actually, that wasn't as funny as that other time that we did this. You remember that time when we did this? Like, oh, I know. Wait, I thought that I did that. No, that was me. That kind of conversation.
Yeah.
You remember that? All right. And it felt like they were brothers again. And then like, why can't we be like this all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Because we grow up and we have duties, and I have this thing, and you're making this difficult. I'm not making it difficult, right? You know I've just want one simple thing, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. That kind of conversation, not normal.
Right.
And I didn't draw all of it. I pitched it like that.
Okay.
I just had a drawing, Anubis, his head peeking out, Moses laughing. And then I pitched it to the heads of story. And they said, like, wait, let's call the directors. The directors come in. And then I pitched it and I'm like, what? This is what we are needing. This is how they have a conversation. This is great. What are you? Oh, my brothers and I told them the story. I was like, this is wonderful. We need to put this moment in the beginning of the movie wherein they were young, where they're getting away with it. Yeah, this is great. Good work. And I go, and they leave my office. I feel like, what the hell just happened there? Is that what they want me to do? That's what they want me to do as a story person. There was no roadmap. It got put into the movie. But it's like, So from then on, they go and like, you have any more of those? I don't know.
But it's interesting because one of the things you come back to is getting to the point where you don't know what to do.
Don't know what to do.
It's like, I'm done. I'm spent. There's nothing left.
There's nothing
And
left.
then there's a breakthrough at that moment, it seems.
Yes. Yes.
That when you get to that point, that you have nothing left but to be yourself.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And that's the thing that ends up paying off. And to tap into your history, to tap into your emotions, to tap into your own sensibilities. It reminds me, there's a quote that Billie Holiday, the singer, said, if I sing like everybody else, there's no reason for me to sing at all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true, right?
Right.
Yeah,
like,
for?
Right. So it's the same thing, right? Like if you're working for the right people and they value that you have a perspective and a point of view and a set of experiences, this is actually one of my arguments for diversity.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Because it's not just about, oh, this person's brown and this is a woman. And it's not just about those things. And we should give them the opportunity. Yes, that's all true. But what's also true is that they also bring a diversity of thought and perspective and experiences that enhance the whole thing.
Yes.
Right. So that what you end up having is a more complete picture of humanity when you do that.
Yes. And
Right?
it's likely something that's presented in a way that you're not used to.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't have any feeling that feels like, I've seen this, or feel like you can have defenses against it.
Right.
But because it sneaks in, and kind of charms you.
Yeah.
That becomes like worth saying that way, because it is not artificial. It just came from a authentic point. And when I celebrate those moments, and sometimes I spoil movies this way, experience of watching it with my daughter and my wife, and like I would, never said that before. That character has never said that. And I'm kind of like, sorry. Watching a movie. Because I'm marking kind of, this is a threshold. The character had never gone there.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
Did you ever watch MASH, the show?
Yes, the TV show, yes.
Yes. So I love that show. And
me too.
Yeah, I think it's a really unbelievably well-written show, and it's just a really great show. Well, Hawkeye, the main character in that show, he hates being in the army. So he won't carry a gun. He hates guns.
Yes.
And he won't salute anyone.
Yes.
He doesn't salute anyone. One of the things I like about that show is that it's essentially a family show.
Yes.
I mean, not a family show for families, but they are a family, right?
Yeah.
And there's the character Radar.
Yes.
And Radar is like the kid that everybody takes care of, right? He's the most sensitive. He's the most naive. He's from this little town. And everybody is pretty much very protective of Radar, and Hawkeye included.
Yeah.
And so I don't know when Radar leaves the show. It's seasons in to the show, because he was even in the movie. That actor,
Yes, he was.
right?
Yeah.
Same actor.
Larry Berghoff was in the movie, right?
Right. So he goes way back. So and so Radar is leaving. And when people left the show, they transferred them out of essentially when they transferred out, or they would get killed or get transferred out, right?
Yeah.
So Hawkeye, I think Hawkeye's got to do a surgery or something, and there's not a lot of time to say goodbye to people, because there's incoming and they've got to take care of, they're all doctors, and they've got to, it's a medical hospital for people who don't know, mobile, what is it? What's MASH name? Mobile Army Surgical Hospital?
Yes.
Does that sound right?
There you go. You got it.
So anyway, so there's always incoming and wounded coming in. And I think that's what's happening. And Radar has to leave, and he's all dressed up in his, dress. I think he's all dressed, I think he's dressed up nice in his formal, whatever you call it in the military. Anyway, but Hawkeye salutes him as he's leaving. And Hawkeye doesn't salute people.
Anybody, yeah.
And it's the most amazing moment, because it's been years, generals, all kinds of people. He's never saluted. And somebody knew in that moment, like, this is the person he salutes.
Yes.
Somebody knew. Somebody was on top of it and knew this is, and I can't tell you the emotion that has, because you earn it for years.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
It's too valuable if you were going to do it, that who would deserve it.
Right.
And if you're the production, you can't predict that Radar was going to win.
Right.
Right. There's no way.
Yeah. They probably figured he would never do it. They probably figured Hawkeye would never salute.
Well, they didn't do it for McLean Stevenson, right?
No, they didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it's like, man, you would have saluted him because he's adorable.
Right.
But that's amazing. I love that show. I watch it and because Hawkeye is the heart of the show.
He is.
And he has a soliloquy in pain. It hits.
Yeah.
He just feels like the idiocy of what this is and the loss of life. Because very rarely you really shown actual muzzle fire or combat. Most of the time you're just laughing your head off, but then there's a moment and Hawkeye kind of encapsulates just what this is in lines of dialogue, which is one of my reverence for the writers, is that I don't see it coming. I know I know nothing of where he's going to go, but because of how Alan Alda behaves it and what actually breaks the character to be able to say it, has been led up to. That by the time the words are spoken, I'm in tears. I'm like,
yeah, it's just it's off the charts. It's so well written, and they did an interesting thing on that show that people didn't realize, which is, it's a sitcom about a serious thing, right? And a lot of people complain about the laugh track on that show, especially now because people don't use it as much. I have a theory about laugh tracks, but I won't get into it. But people complained about the laugh tracks. But what was interesting about the laugh track in that show was that the laugh track never happened in surgery.
Yeah.
Right. Oh. So the same jokes and stuff were happening, but they said, well, no, this is a special place where we're not going to have a laugh track. So the same jokes and things would be there, but it was an interesting contrast. And people don't talk about that contrast, but that's actually an interesting contrast.
So there are revered areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But MASH was the first show because I was such a Twilight Zone fan and learned a lot about writing from watching Rod Serling. MASH was the first show where I said, oh, a good story doesn't have to have a crazy twist ending. Like, it was the first time. Yeah. Like, when I was a kid, I was like, wait a minute, you can tell another kind of story. MASH really did. Yeah. But, I could go on and on about it. So let's not go on about MASH. Anyway, if you haven't seen MASH. Yeah, I know.
I can talk about that too, because I love that show. It was a lifeline to quality TV back then when it was happening. It felt like all the other shows feels like about the same. But MASH felt like it was doing something different. And then after that, it was Hill Street Blues was doing something different. And then St. Elsewhere was doing something different. All those places that felt like, oh, they broke new ground. And just to the point that we were making earlier, they were tapping into the authentic moments.
Yeah.
It wasn't, as much as I like Barney Miller, right? But Hill Street Blues, man, people are crazy and getting killed, and their relationships are not ideal, and then crazy. And then, but it just felt like, oh, this is worth respecting for the kind of tension they're creating.
For people who don't know Barney Miller was a sitcom that took place in a police precinct. Although, let me just say this about Barney Miller.
Okay. There were very, very deep pathos in it, too.
There's an episode of Barney Miller where they go out. Mostly you were inside the police
squad room,
Yeah, you never really left there. Occasionally you would leave, but mostly you stayed there. And they got called out. I think it was a robbery, a bank robbery or something. They got called out. And when they come back, you find out one of the cops has killed one of the suspects. He shot him. He was a kid. And that character had a breakdown and couldn't come back to work. And Barney came to see him at his house, and he's like, I can't. This is like over several episodes. He's like, I can't do this anymore. And he left the show. I can't. It was pretty amazing, because one of the things you don't see anymore are the emotional consequences of death, right? Death just happens wholesale.
Well, and Jack Sue died.
Yeah.
And leaves, disappears from the cast.
Right.
And for me, it's just seeing another Asian person who was really funny. And
he was hilarious. Yeah.
Oh my God, why he's gone? Who am I going to root for?
Yeah, he was great.
We can go on about that.
We can go on about that.
We should just do a podcast of you and me just going down memory lane. We'd be rich.
We get a lot of people in their 50s and 60s listening to the show. That's what would happen.
Yeah.
So
hopefully they have secure income by now.
Yeah.
Retirement.
Sure. So, okay, I just want to get to, this is good because we got to some of the emotional things. That's what I really like about your work.
Oh, okay.
Is that and where you learned it, and you don't seem to have learned it externally. You seem to have learned it internally, meaning, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't watch a bunch of John Ford movies and go, look how he does it.
No.
That's not where it came from.
No, it came from me resisting it, for one, most of the time.
Why did you resist it?
Because I don't want to, when I was younger, I liked collecting articles from writing magazines when I was in the Philippines from a library. Because I wanted to write. I don't understand what writing means. Not that I wanted to be. I don't want to be a writer, but I somehow like that, right? And then I always deny the thing that people are giving me opportunities for. It's like, oh, Ronnie, you're here in Prince of Egypt. You're doing this great work. We love you. You were kind of like that diamond in the rough here. We know everybody walked past you, but actually you're this. You want a head story? Be the story on the next one on Road to El Dorado. It's like, I say, you guys probably out of your mind, because I've only served not even the full tour on feature story work on Prince of Egypt in the same studio, and you want me to be the lead, the head of a group of story people. It was like, you probably should keep looking, because not really know that job. But they wanted me for it, and then I resist. So by the time that I get to do other things, I always say, you probably have the wrong guy. You don't really want this. When Andrew promoted me to be one of the heads of story on Finding Nemo, I am thinking, it's like, in my head, I wanted to say no, because, Andrew, I just joined the company. There's a whole lot of people behind me here who've been here longer.
Right.
I said this at DreamWorks too before, and that everyone probably would love this job more. It would mean more. But he asked me so earnestly. It's like, People seem to respond to you. You do good work, and I need your help right now. I'm in a pinch. I just need you to kind of man the station and be the head of story for as long as you can do it for me. And just like, and I wanted to say no, but instead I said yes. And I feel like maybe he's going to live to regret it, but at least it's temporary. By the time that I did do the head of story job for Pete Docter on Up, I almost felt like he's going to change his mind.
Yeah.
Because there are other candidates that want this job. I was just available, and he needs to speak for me because there's a resources. But he didn't change his mind. We had a great working relationship. And after that, he's just like, I want you to co-direct in this movie. I wanted to say, it's like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
But I said yes. Because they did kind of, my native reaction to everything was to think that I'm not worthy of it. But understanding the job, which is the point that you were trying to make, the reason I think that they offered him is because I actually was doing it already.
Right. Like I said, people recognize what you can do before you do often.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it's funny because Andrew Stanton's the reason that I even ever got to speak at my first speaking jobs at Pixar.
Yes,
lecturing about story.
Yeah,
It was because of Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew read Invisible Ink before it was published.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I have a friend, Derek Thompson, who's a storyboard artist.
Yeah.
There, and he read it and said, "Hey, can I show this to Andrew?" And so Andrew read it and then said, "Hey, you should be down here lecturing." So I came down. But I wanted to say no to that because I was like, well, so Pixar, they know what story. What am I going to tell them? There's nothing for me to tell them, And I have never been so nervous speaking to a group as I was that first. And you were there.
I was there.
You were there.
I was there.
You were there.
That was fun.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that much fun for me.
I don't care.
At least the first time.
Yes.
But then, I don't know, something hit me, and I really almost said no. I almost said no to it because I was so scared of it. And then I thought, I will kick myself forever if I don't say yes.
Yes. Yeah.
If I go and I fail, at least I tried it. So I went.
Yeah. Glad that you did, because you probably found out that we were, I don't know if we were different from any other group, but this is a very welcoming and open society at Pixar. There was nothing to fear because all of us are we're geeks about these kinds of things.
Well,
celebrate.
I remember because I was doing one class where I was there once a week, like on Wednesdays.
I did that too.
Yeah. And I remember that Andrew, who, I was just like, I can't even believe that, I can talk to Andrew. Like, Andrew, you're a guy that I know in the world, right? Like, that blows my mind sometimes. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he would come to class and he was always there and he was always present. And one day he didn't show up yet at a meeting or something, and he showed up late, and he's like, "I'm really sorry that I'm late." And I'm like, all I can think is, I can't believe that you sit through this at all, like, let alone apologize that you're late, But yeah, no, it's what eventually it's like, oh, these are just folks, I mean, all that the barrier sort of broke down, and I was used to being there after a while, and it all made sense. But that initial, because all I saw were the movies, I didn't know the people, right? And particularly Finding Nemo just blew my mind so much, and it was so dialed, it was so precise.
Yeah,
there's a precision to Nemo that is undeniable. And I was like, well, there's really nothing for me to say to these people. They clearly have it. And so, but that's just to say that those doubts, I think that's important for people who might be watching or listening to this, that those doubts about your own ability, about your, whatever you think your skill set is, whatever you think the talent you bring is not enough, because you will invariably, if it's someplace you want to work or somebody you want to work with, you'll think of them as they're on Mount Olympus or something. And you don't know that they have those doubts, which I'm glad you talked about your doubts. and your insecurities, because I think that people need to hear those things because they don't imagine that you have them. They don't, right? They just see the work and they don't know everything that it took to get there, and they don't know the struggle, and they don't know the risk you took to do that thing. And so I think it's really important that you say those things. So I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, I'm also kind of most of the time trying to dispel this observation of coming to Pixar or meeting your heroes feeling like these infallible gods, because I've hanging out with these people, they kind of normalize this chaos, the being lost, the being frustrated as part of the process, and that also to respect that it actually is leading you somewhere. The frustration is kind of like how your body works, is that if there's pain in there, that means something good is being fixed. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the philosophy of it. And then leading back to what you were observing, which is really great, I may have to use it now, is that it wasn't outside of me that when I went and looked for, I need this expertise, I'm going to go out there and get it and then make it be part of me. That probably happened because I was always under the gun and under fire. That when you kind of grow the facilial awareness, it happened while you were working. That it was not, I didn't have the luxury of a season of saying, you know what I need?
Right.
2 of these, 1 of those, and maybe a half bucket of these, and then I'll be better. But the benefit of it, and although I couldn't direct you on how to do it, the fascinating thing is that when you are kind of in a season of live bullets and trying whatever you do, that when it actually sticks, you are actually handling nothing theoretical.
Right.
So when it gets proven, in a very potent way.
Yeah.
You when you're trying to learn it outside of yourself as a book, as an exercise, a layer of it is that it doesn't matter.
Right.
And then also there's a layer of like, nobody will see it.
Right.
Nobody cares. But here, because you're always kind of on stage, you're always live with colleagues and things are being pushed and pulled, the test of whether this facility, this skill, or you've leveled up came under duress while you're in motion, while there are stakes of deadlines, and also you yourself are kind of right on the line there. So by the time you gain it, you're probably like miles away from the moment already, observing it. It's like, oh yeah, that moment did happen. It was a while back there.
Yeah.
And you weren't paying attention anymore, and you feel like, oh, I kind of grew this other skill while I was doing that. Oh, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
That is why I feel that as much as I like the idea of workshops and I like the idea of schools, I'm thinking is that what I love about them is like this opens up for you an aspect of having radar for it.
Right.
So that you will know that stand still right about here. Oh, it hurts right about there.
Right.
Oh, okay, you're about to quit. You probably are just right in the right place to be able to just stay put. I've heard it spoken before because I do that about listening to writers.
Yeah.
And filmmakers. All right about now, film's falling apart.
Yeah.
The quest is kind of like running ragged. This is the time. This is going to matter.
It's funny. I tell people all the time, like somebody told me they were thinking about quitting, they're trying to write and get into writing. They said, I'm thinking about quitting. I go, you know what? You're not in this business until you think about quitting. Like you're not really in it yet. That's part of it. Like you have to get to that place where you're like, I suck. It all sucks. And it's interesting because you are then on the precipice of something when that happens.
Yes.
And it's hard to explain that to people.
It's hard to explain. You can't count on it because you don't know, is this really the worst already?
Right. Yeah.
And then it gets worse. Okay, maybe now's the time to quit, right? Is it really the worst? Because you haven't been here before, it feels like the worst. Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, years ago, your level of what the worst was is now past you. You already know that. Now
That's true.
This is what is the bleeding edge. And you're wondering, okay, maybe I really am not built for this. I should just own up to the fact that I'm failing and just walk away. It's just the most dignified thing to do right now.
Well,
And then it's not. It's not.
Yeah. Well, I had to write these books for Macmillan for First Second, and one book was already written when they asked me to write a book, so I just gave them the script and they said fine, and that became a book. But then they paid me to write 2 other books, and it's weird when somebody pays you to write a book and there's no book, there's nothing, there's no book, and they're like, here's some money, go write a book, and you're like, I've written books, but I would write them and then didn't try to get them published. The idea that there would be nothing and somebody would give me a check was beyond my comprehension. And especially with the last book, because they wanted me to write a memoir. And I'm like, first of all, who am I to write a memoir, right? Like, who cares? Who cares?
You write a memoir, we'll read it.
Yeah. So, but and it just was like, well, who wants to read but it was really interesting because that doubt that I had about my ability to do it, and the fears that I had, those were familiar. And so what's interesting about it is they didn't go away. I had all the same fears as if I had never done it before, but I had the knowledge that I had done it before.
Yes.
Right. And that's what pulled me through it. Well, I have done this. And when I don't think I can do it, I've had all of those feelings before, and somehow I did it. So I just trusted that I could do it.
Yes.
We'll see when the book comes out, but I think let me know. Well, it'll be a while. It's just now starting to get drawn, the memoir. So it'll be 2 years.
That's a great way to talk about it. It's hard to tell people this, that you've just signed up for a whole lot of pain. And then also each time, even though you have gone through it, to me it feels like, why am I going through this? Oh my God, as I've been through this already and I know this, okay, so I should calm down. And yet it's not exactly the same thing.
Right. No, it's not always.
It actually has other surprises in store that you have never done before. And you're wondering, okay, I thought that there wasn't going to be anything worse than that. That was the last time. And now this is another thing that shows up that, I don't want to do this. This is I don't want to.
Well, that only happens when you're trying to get better. It doesn't happen if you're interested in saying the same, right? If you're interested in saying the same, you have a bag of tricks, you pull them out, you do your thing, and you go home, right? Part of what people experience when they experience these anxieties is about trying to be the best version of themselves. Yeah. Right? Because you could eliminate that anxiety by going, this is my bag of tricks. Right. And you wouldn't have any anxiety about it.
Yes.
Right.
I come home, I have a bourbon, I go to sleep.
Yeah.
I wake up, I do the same thing.
Yeah. Frank Oz talks about not knowing. He likes the not knowing.
Oh,
he leaps into the abyss. He talks about it like that, that it's scary and all those things, but it's the not knowing that where the magic comes in.
Yes.
And so it's almost like you get all these skills and then you kind of have to forget about all that stuff and then it works through you. It's an interesting thing. And when it's working, it works through you. I can't explain it any better than that.
Yes.
But when it's working, you don't feel like you're doing anything except listening.
Yeah. And you're channeling something.
Yeah.
Or you're kind of, it's on automatic that it feels like you're on for just the ride. And we have that, you probably heard us say that at Pixar. It's like, we jump out of planes and just build a parachute on the way down.
Yeah.
There's a very high probability that we would be a red smear.
But I have to say, and I was telling this to somebody just the other day. I was working on I was in a story helping a director with a story, develop a story at the very beginning of the process. And we hit this wall. And I'd never been in a situation where this happened before, outside of Pixar. Whereas we hit this wall like, well, this is an impossible problem to solve. But there was no anxiety about it. Like, everybody goes, well, that's just the way it is sometimes with stories, and we'll solve it. And, you know, we went and had lunch and we didn't think about it, you know, and came back and we were fresh and whatever. But that lack of anxiety around the problem was really interesting to me.
Yes.
That it was just like, that's what happens with stories. And everybody was fine with it, you know.
That's great.
Yeah. And when somebody brings
people that way.
Yeah. But when somebody brings you in as the person who's going to help and fix it, then you feel... I was feeling the anxiety that I had to fix it and have the answers. And they were like, sometimes you don't have the answers. And I was like, oh, okay. Then I can relax.
That's great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That is funny because I usually, when I'm consulting, somebody brings me in, something they don't even mean to. They just want to show me what they're doing.
Oh, sure. That happens. Yeah.
And then I go and it's like, oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, but we hit kind of this impasse on this wall. I'm thinking, it's like, that actually is one of those things that I love about working with the people I work with, is that it doesn't become any less painful and frustrating.
No.
But if you were newer at this, you would feel that it's kind of at the end. And then also it's kind of a referendum on how bad you are at this.
Right.
And that, for me, it feels like, oh, well, this is now when you go to work, right?
Yeah.
Now we work,
right? Yeah.
Because everything got us to this point and now things don't work.
Right.
To this point where it doesn't work. Now we work.
Yeah.
Now that is fun because I've done it so many times, and it's again frustrating and it will be difficult. But when it doesn't work is when all these other skills and training and resilience come in. And I'm thinking, it's like, oh, that's a lot of fun too. And I talk about it as if like, oh, this is going to be great. And they're looking at you as if like, are you insane? You wanted this to be the solution. I know. And obviously it isn't. So we're going to find it. It's somewhere here, isn't it? Like, and then they go, you know what? They will leave. I leave a meeting like that, and they feel like, I want that guy back.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't tell them I have a solution. I have a demeanor.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't. Yeah, the work's going to be tough. Oh, it's going to be shitty tomorrow. It's going to be even worse the following day.
Right.
But yeah, we're going to go and work on it.
But reoccurring, in your life and in your career, reoccurring is this idea that when you hit that space, I always tell people this, because I've noticed that people will be safe, right? They'll create in a very safe, they won't push themselves, right? And I always say to them, you cannot break through the wall until you hit the wall. And it seems like your career is that you hit the wall and that's when you break through. You have to hit it though.
Yes, you have to. You can trick yourself into thinking that you already did because nobody wants pain.
Right.
But you also know that nagging feeling is like, I came up with a pat solution, or kind of like I kind of hit the wall, but not really.
Right.
And you kind of know it from the other journeys, and feel like, no, there's more coming.
Yeah.
And I sound like that guy in that movie where it's kind of, oh yeah, this is kind of hard. This is horrible. It's kind of like, and there's that downer old man that's like, no, there's more coming. And then he turns out to be right. It's like, the rest of you are going to die. So, all right. Oh, God. Yeah, it's going to cost. It's going to hurt.
Yeah.
I don't want to, but that's the only way through it. Because the failure, the other one, backing away from this, kind of, that sticks with you longer.
Right.
It never goes away.
Nope.
If you actually back away from something knowing it was going to hurt, and then that you could have actually doubled down and just muscled through it to the best of your abilities. You could still fail. Come on. It's still there.
Right. Yeah.
But going through it, this just has secret rewards and learning that is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
The walking away kind of thing is like, oh, it's going to come back around or in itself destroy you.
Right.
And I don't want that.
No, you're exactly right. Well, that sounds like a perfect place to end. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you very much.
It was really
fun.
a great conversation, and we will let you know when we're putting it up and all of that stuff.
Awesome. Thank you.
But yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much, Ronnie.
You Are a Storyteller, Masters of the Craft is produced in Seattle, Washington by Belief Agency.